Can you even imagine your own mother, the woman who raised you, standing in court and testifying against you? Not just that, but trying to force you to pay child support for a baby that wasn't yours, all because, in her words, DNA doesn't matter. Family is family? Trust me, that's just the beginning of how my life completely imploded and how I finally uncovered a disgusting truth that ripped my world apart. Look, my mom, she always wanted a daughter. It was her lifelong dream. I mean, her excitement when she and my dad found out they were expecting their first child, that was me. It was huge. But then, the moment she learned I was a boy, everything shifted. She was crushed, utterly disappointed, and she wasn't shy about telling me. She's recounted that story to me countless times throughout my life, always making it crystal clear she wished for a different outcome. My parents did plan for more kids, especially because my mom was so set on having a girl. But life had other ideas. After I was born, she had severe health issues, making it impossible to carry another child. The thought of never conceiving again, of that dream dying, it must have been devastating. I can only imagine the emotional weight of that loss, and honestly, I think she still carries it today. That realization that her dream of a daughter would never come true, it was probably incredibly painful for her. In the years that followed, my mom would constantly talk about wanting a daughter. That yearning just seemed to intensify over time. I'd see how she doted on my female cousins, lavishing them with affection and attention. It felt like she was giving them all the maternal love she'd always hoped to give a daughter of her own. Extra gifts, extra affection. There was a clear difference in how she treated them compared to me. Honestly, for most of my life, it didn't really bother me. I just accepted that this was Mom. I didn't take her favoritism personally. I knew she loved me, and I was mostly at peace with it. That is, until Sophia, my ex-wife, walked into the picture. Sophia was the daughter of my mom's long-lost best friend from high school. My mom had just reconnected with her after years. When Mom met Sophia for the first time, she was absolutely blown away by her beauty. Instantly, she got this idea in her head. Sophia was the one, the perfect match for me. I was single then, and my mom, bless her heart, had been relentless in trying to set me up. But none of those attempts ever really clicked. This time, she was determined, persistent. She kept telling me how stunning, how wonderful Sophia was, how perfectly we'd complement each other. It became an obsession for her. For weeks, I endured her constant pushing. Eventually, I caved. Honestly, I agreed to that blind date more to shut her up than out of any real curiosity. I just wanted her to stop talking about Sophia and let me live my life. When I finally met Sophia, my first impression, yeah, she was everything my mom hyped her up to be. Incredibly beautiful, no doubt. But as the evening wore on, and we actually talked, I realized there wasn't much substance beneath all that beauty. One of the first things I always try to figure out about someone is what drives them, their goals, their dreams. So, I asked Sophia what she wanted to do with her life. Her answer actually surprised me. Without hesitation, she said her dream was to be a stay-at-home mom. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to raise a family, absolutely not. But, at that point in my life, my ambitions were totally different. I wasn't even thinking about kids anytime soon. I wanted a partner with aspirations beyond just starting a family. So, naturally, I asked, what about before you have kids? What do you plan to do then? Her response left me even more perplexed. She just wanted to be a stay-at-home wife. I just stared at her, confused. She explained that her mom had always been a stay-at-home mom until her dad passed, and in Sophia's eyes, that was the secret to her parents' successful marriage. I could respect that it worked for them, but it was so far from what I was looking for. I wanted someone with passion, purpose, whether that was a career or a personal pursuit. The idea of someone wanting to be a stay-at-home spouse from the get-go just didn't align with my values then. She and her mom were actually living with her uncle, who covered all their expenses, because her mom still didn't want to work. So when I got back from that first date, I was undeniably disappointed. I went in with low expectations, mostly to appease my mom, but I left knowing this wasn't what I wanted. Of course, my mother wasn't pleased. Not at all. She was visibly upset, almost like I had personally wronged her by not giving Sophia a real chance. She kept telling me I hadn't truly gotten to know Sophia, insisting if I just tried a little harder, I'd see what she saw. But my mind was made up. I told her, as firmly as I could, to let it go. We needed to move on. I should have known better. My mother doesn't give up easily, especially when she's got her heart set on something. Not long after that disastrous first date, she invited me over to her house. Pretty normal, she'd often ask me for dinner. But this time, when I arrived, Sophia was already there. Apparently, my mom had taken it upon herself to invite Sophia over too, just to force another meeting between us. The moment I walked in, my parents practically sprinted out the door, both with these mischievous smiles, chirping, "Enjoy your date." I was mortified. Absolutely mortified. And judging by Sophia's face, I'm pretty sure she felt the exact same way. We just stood there for a moment, awkwardly staring at each other, neither of us knowing what to say. It was like being ambushed on a blind date, right in my own parents' living room, with no escape. For a few minutes, pure, agonizing silence. I could have made an excuse and bolted, but I didn't want to embarrass her. She was just as much a victim of my mom's overzealous matchmaking as I was. So, instead of running, we exchanged a couple of awkward laughs, acknowledging how bizarre the whole thing was, and eventually sat down to talk. I figured, hey, we're here. Might as well make the best of it. I asked her to tell me more about herself. She admitted, pretty openly, that she'd liked me after our first date, and thought I liked her too. When I never called, she was confused. I gently told her that while she was kind and beautiful, I felt we had very different life goals, especially since she wanted to be a stay-at-home wife. That's when Sophia explained that her intention wasn't just to sit around doing nothing, even if we didn't have children right away. She started talking about her volunteer work at her church, how she dedicated her days to helping children and those in need. Her explanation gave me a whole new perspective. I started seeing another side of Sophia, one I hadn't appreciated before. At her core, she seemed genuinely warm, kind, or at least, that's how she portrayed herself to me initially. She wasn't driven by career ambitions, but she seemed to have found her purpose in caring for others. That level of generosity, that spirit, it felt rare. So, despite my lingering reservations and doubts about our compatibility, I decided to take a leap. Asked her out again. Sophia and I dated for about a year. Then we decided to get engaged. Around that time, I also got a big promotion at work, which boosted my income significantly and gave me a real sense of stability. I felt financially comfortable enough to support Sophia once we were married, and that gave me the confidence to finally propose. But here's the thing. The timing wasn't entirely my decision. Both our mothers, especially mine, had been subtly pushing us to get married sooner rather than later. They kept reminding us Sophia's biological clock was ticking, even though neither of us had immediate plans for kids. The pressure was constant, and their insistence made me think getting married soon was just the natural next step. When we finally got engaged, my mom, true to form, took over the wedding planning. She insisted on a grand ceremony, sparing no expense, and offered to pay for the whole thing herself. My mother was absolutely determined to make Sophia's dream wedding come true, almost as if it were her own daughter's wedding. It was a gesture that was both incredibly generous and, honestly, a little overwhelming. From the venue to the flowers to the guest list, no detail was too small for her to obsess over. The ceremony ended up being incredibly lavish, way grander than I'd anticipated. But seeing how happy Sophia was, that made it all worth it. Or so I thought. After the wedding and honeymoon, I quickly dove back into my routine. My job, with the new promotion, was more demanding than ever. Sophia moved into my place, and just as we discussed, she fully embraced her role as a stay-at-home wife. But she wasn't idle, no. True to her word, she continued her volunteer work at a local church, which she was passionate about. However, it wasn't long after we settled into married life that I started noticing things about her routine that just seemed off. We'd never lived together before, so I was discovering all these little day-to-day habits I hadn't known when we were dating. One thing that really stuck out was her regular insistence that I send money to her mother every single month. She argued we had more than enough, and as a good son-in-law, it was my duty to support her mom. I found it so odd, especially since this was never brought up before we got married. I'd always assumed her uncle was taking care of her mother's needs. But now, out of nowhere, I was expected to contribute financially. Secondly, Sophia would often go out and come home really late in the evening. I mean, I expected that as a stay-at-home wife, she'd be home more often, handling household things like cooking and cleaning during the day. Instead, she always seemed rushed when I got back from work, frantically throwing dinner together late in the evening. Whenever I asked why she was home so late, she'd launch into stories about helping someone, a homeless person, a kid from the community who needed guidance. I didn't want to discourage her from doing what she felt was meaningful. But at the same time, I thought there was an understanding that, as a homemaker, she'd handle certain responsibilities. That just wasn't happening. Our meals were often late. She'd just throw something together last minute. The laundry was never done on time. The house was rarely cleaned the way I thought it should be. I tried not to make a big deal out of it at first. But as time went on, I couldn't help but feel utterly frustrated. I started bringing it up, having several calm conversations about how she could balance her volunteer work with her responsibilities at home. Each time, she promised she'd change, she'd do better. But the pattern? It never changed. It was always the same story. Late dinners, undone chores, excuses about how busy she'd been helping others. One weekend, when she was out volunteering again, I decided to surprise her at the church. I thought, hey, it might be nice to spend some time with her in her element, maybe even lend a hand. When I arrived, I asked around for Sophia, fully expecting to find her elbow-deep in charity work. But the people at the church just looked confused. When I mentioned her name, after asking several different folks, it became horrifyingly clear. My wife had never volunteered there. In fact, no one even knew who she was. A knot formed in my stomach. For months after we got married, Sophia had been telling me she spent her days at this exact church, volunteering. But now I was hearing she hadn't even set foot in the place. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I made a mistake? Misunderstood the church's name? Maybe she volunteered somewhere else nearby. Later that evening, when she came home, I played it cool, casually asked her about her day. She launched into her usual spiel, explaining how hard she'd worked, detailing all the people she'd helped, all the things she'd accomplished. After she finished, I asked her directly, "So, which church were you volunteering at today?"
Just to see.
Sure enough, she repeated the exact name of the church I'd visited, the same one where they told me she didn't work. That's when it hit me. Something was seriously wrong. Sophia had been lying to me, not just once but repeatedly, about where she was spending her time. This wasn't some simple misunderstanding. She was deliberately deceiving me, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. What was she really doing all day? Why the constant lies? Something was definitely up, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. The very next day, instead of heading to work, I parked my car down the street from our house, far enough to stay out of sight but close enough to watch. I'd made up my mind. I was going to follow her. I wanted her to prove me wrong, to head to the church like she always said. I wanted this whole suspicion to be a misunderstanding. I was even mentally preparing myself to apologize later, to explain my insecurity got the best of me. But what unfolded next? Nothing could have prepared me for it. An hour after I'd left, I saw her walk out the front door. But instead of her usual conservative clothes, the ones she wore around the house or with me, she was dressed completely differently.
Shorts.
A tank top. An outfit I'd never seen her wear. I watched as she got into her car, and instead of driving towards the church, she took off in the opposite direction. My heart started pounding. I followed, keeping a few cars behind, trying not to raise suspicion. I kept telling myself, there has to be a logical explanation. An errand. Meeting someone from the church. Maybe. Eventually, she pulled into a quiet neighborhood and parked in front of a house I didn't recognize. Not her mother's. Not her cousin's. I saw a man walk out of the house to greet her. My heart sank. I watched him embrace her. And then, to my utter shock, they kissed. Right there in the driveway. They held each other, arms wrapped around one another, like it was the most natural thing in the world for them. I couldn't breathe. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, except I was the one crashing, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I tried to process what I was seeing. Sophia and the man walked back inside, arms still around each other, as if this was something they'd done 100 times before. I felt sick. One thing was crystal clear. This wasn't just a random fling or a one-time mistake. The way they interacted, the comfort between them, it was a long-standing affair. My heart felt like it had been ripped right out of my chest. All the doubts, the odd timings, the strange excuses, it all made sickening sense now. She had been living a double life, lying to me about where she spent her time, carrying on this affair right under my nose. My first instinct was to call my mother. I wanted to vent, to tell her everything, to hear her voice and just get some comfort. But I knew if I told her, she'd call Sophia immediately, either out of anger or shock, and that would tip Sophia off. I didn't want her to know I'd found out. Not yet. I needed proof. Concrete evidence of her affair. So that when the time inevitably came to confront her, I'd have everything I needed to end this marriage. I had to be smart. For 2 agonizing weeks after that shocking discovery, I channeled all my energy into gathering evidence for the divorce. I met with a lawyer, making sure my assets would be as protected as possible. We didn't have a prenup, and I wasn't about to let the fallout from this betrayal leave me financially ruined. The evening I finally confronted Sophia felt surreal. I sat her down calmly, told her I knew about her affair. She looked shocked at first, even tried to argue, to deny everything. But I was ready. One by one, I presented her with all the evidence I'd collected, photos of her with a man, screenshots of their text messages I'd pulled from her phone, even records of the days she'd lied about being at church. With every piece of evidence she knew there was no way to talk herself out of this. Finally, begrudgingly, she confessed. She admitted the man was her high school boyfriend, which, by then, I'd already figured out from some quick Facebook research. She tried to downplay the whole thing, saying she was just being stupid, just fooling around, nothing serious. She insisted she never intended for things to go that far. I wasn't buying a single word. I looked her dead in the eyes and firmly told her, "I'm divorcing you." She was stunned. I think, deep down, she believed she could talk her way out of it, that I'd forgive her, or be swayed by her excuses. But when she realized I was serious, she started to fight it. She begged me to reconsider, saying she could change, we could work things out. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. I knew, with absolute certainty, that if I stayed, I would never be able to trust her again. I calmly told her to pack her bags and leave. And to ensure there would be no confusion, no attempts to manipulate our families, I created a group chat with my parents and Sophia's mother. In that chat, I laid everything out clearly. I sent all the proof of Sophia's infidelity, the photos, the text messages, everything. I wanted them to know the full, unvarnished truth about why I was divorcing her. I wanted to prevent any false narratives from being spun by Sophia or her mother. I knew that once the news broke, all hell would break loose, and I wasn't leaving any room for misunderstanding. As expected, the reactions were intense. My mother was absolutely livid, outraged that Sophia had betrayed me. But at the same time, both she and Sophia's mother couldn't help but beg me to reconsider. Despite the undeniable evidence of Sophia's infidelity, they pleaded with me to find it in my heart to forgive her and give her another chance. Thankfully, my dad stood by my side. He reassured me I was making the right decision, that no one should stay with a cheating partner, no matter the circumstances. He told me I deserved better, and he supported my decision to move forward with the divorce. A week after I filed, Sophia and her mother showed up at my house, completely unexpectedly. And Sophia dropped a bomb. She was pregnant. With my child. My immediate reaction was pure disbelief. I outright refused to accept I was the father, not after her affair. Sophia's mother lashed out. accusing me of ruining her daughter's life by not accepting responsibility for the baby and divorcing Sophia so suddenly. She made me sound like the cruel one. Then, my own mother doubled down on her pleas. She talked about how children can change everything in a marriage, how a baby could magically bring Sophia and me closer, as if pregnancy was some miracle cure for infidelity. She told me Sophia had promised to never cheat again, and that I needed to consider the child's future, not just my pride. She made me feel like the bad guy for choosing to walk away from a marriage where trust was utterly shattered. When I still wouldn't give in to her twisted reasoning, my mother, in a fit of desperation, threatened to testify against me in court if child support came up. She swore she'd make sure I paid for the baby, regardless of whether or not it was mine. DNA doesn't matter, she argued. Family is family. She didn't care who the biological father was. She was determined to claim that child as her grandchild, even if it meant going against me, her own son, in court. And that's exactly what she did. True to her word, my mother testified against me during the divorce proceedings. It was one of the most painful betrayals I have ever experienced. My lawyer and I fought hard, working to ensure the court understood Sophia had been unfaithful and that there was a very real possibility the child wasn't mine. But my mother and Sophia's mother testified that Sophia's affair wasn't anything sexual, downplaying her infidelity like it was some innocent mistake. They even argued that because Sophia and I had been intimate just weeks before our separation, right around the time I discovered her affair, the baby must be mine. Thankfully, in the end, the judge ruled that they couldn't make any final decision about child support or paternity until after the baby was born. A proper paternity test had to be conducted. Only then would it be determined if I was the biological father. I was so relieved. It felt like a small victory in what had been a draining, painful process. At least now, I wouldn't be forced to support a child that might not be mine without solid proof. But my mother, Sophia, and her mother? They were furious with the outcome. My mother later came up to me and told me she wished I wasn't her child. She said if I was truly a man, I should pull my pants up and accept Sophia's child as mine, regardless of what the paternity test proved. For months, she went around bad-mouthing me to everyone in our family, painting me as the villain who destroyed my marriage over what she insisted was just Sophia's one-time mistake. No matter how much proof I presented or how many logical arguments I made, my mother clung to her narrative, blaming me for everything that had gone wrong. So, you can imagine my satisfaction when the day finally came for the paternity test results. Sophia gave birth to a beautiful baby girl that week, and we promptly had the test done. And guess what? As expected, the baby did not belong to me. When I shared the results with Sophia, she broke down in tears, pleading, begging me to accept the child. She argued that her friends and family would shun her and her daughter if I didn't step up and take responsibility. I felt a deep pit of sympathy for her situation, truly. But it didn't change the fact that I was not the father. I'm sorry, but I can't do that, I told her firmly. It's no longer my responsibility. Since then, Sophia has continued to call me, leaving me voice messages, begging me to reconsider. So, for everyone who's been asking, Sophia's still arguing that since I probably won't have kids anytime soon, I should just think of this baby as mine, even though she cheated on me. She also revealed something truly sickening. The guy she was having the affair with? Her sweetheart? He refused to marry her. He's never been ready to settle down, which is why, she admits, she had to marry me in the first place. It became horrifyingly clear. She wanted to use me as a cash cow while continuing her affair with him. Honestly, I hope she at least takes him to court for child support. But at this point, I just don't care anymore. Then I took everyone's advice. I made a Facebook post. I publicly announced that I was not the father of Sophia's child. I was tired of my mom supporting Sophia after everything she'd done, after she had cheated on me. I wanted to humiliate her, just the way she had humiliated me for months. And guess what? After I made that post, directly calling out my mom for backing Sophia, she called me furious, because people had started to turn on her. She accused me of betraying her, which was beyond ironic, considering she was the one who backstabbed me by testifying against me in court and trying to make me pay child support for another man's baby. A lot of my mom's friends and relatives had actually believed her narrative at first. But now, with the paternity test results out, it was crystal clear. My mom was completely wrong about Sophia. People started calling her out in the comments of my post, and even to her face, telling her she needed to be a better parent to me and how I was the actual victim in this whole mess. After my mother called to yell at me, she and Dad ended up having a huge fight. He was fed up. Fed up with her constantly bullying me, fed up with her trying to force this insane idea of me accepting Sophia's child, even though it wasn't mine. He actually threatened to leave her if she didn't drop it. It's been 5 months since my last update, and this past month, my parents decided to separate.
Why?
Because my mom has refused to change. She's actually started calling herself Grandma to Sophia's baby. She's been giving Sophia money every month, even volunteers to babysit the child. It's like she's finally living out her dream of having a long-lost daughter, just like she always wanted. But my dad? He's completely tired of it. He feels this is borderline inappropriate, and he wants absolutely nothing to do with Sophia or her child. This led to multiple, explosive fights, with my mother still refusing to take any accountability. As a result, my dad has moved out. He's been staying with me. It breaks my heart, honestly, that my mom is choosing to focus on my cheater ex-wife's daughter over her own family. Anyway, my dad will be talking to a lawyer this week and moving forward with the divorce. It's been a crazy, painful journey, and I'm still processing a lot of it. What would you have done in my shoes? Have any of you ever had family turn on you like this? Let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to hear your thoughts.